Chiki and Amara's marriage looks perfect, but Amara has a big secret. On their wedding night, she uses blood from meat to trick Chiki into thinking she's a virgin. As they start their life together, the lies become harder to keep. Chiki doesn't know the truth, but problems begin to show. Will he find out? Can their love survive the lies? Find out in this story full of drama and surprises. Lagos, the city of hustle and dreams, was as vibrant as it was chaotic. The streets were always buzzing with life, cars honking, traders shouting, and people moving in a rush, chasing after one opportunity or another. Amidst this vibrant chaos lived Chiki, a young man whose reputation had spread far and wide, not for his business acumen or his ambition, but for his insatiable appetite for women. Cheek was the kind of man who could walk into a room and command attention without saying a word. At 6 feet tall, with smooth, dark skin that gleamed under the Lagos sun and a physique sculpted by hours at the gym, Chike knew he had a presence that women found irresistible. His pearly white smile and deep baritone voice were his weapons, and he used them expertly, leaving a trail of broken hearts wherever he went. But behind the charm and the good looks was a man with a problem, a man addicted to the thrill of conquest. Cheek's friends, many of whom envied his success with women, often joked about his womanizing ways. But Segun, his best friend, wasn't laughing. Segun had known Cheek since they were boys growing up in the bustling neighborhood of Surulere. They had been through everything together, school, family dramas, even the occasional scrape with the law. But as they grew older, Segun had taken a different path, one that valued stability and responsibility, while Chike had embraced a lifestyle of endless indulgence. One hot afternoon, as the two friends sat on the balcony of Cheek's apartment in Lekki, Segun once again tried to reason with his friend. He had grown tired of watching Cheek dive deeper into a lifestyle that was bound to lead to destruction. The sun was setting, casting a golden hue over the Lagos skyline, but Segun's mood was far from light. "Cheek," Segun began, his voice heavy with concern. "We've had this conversation more times than I can count, but you never listen. This thing you're doing, this lifestyle of sleeping with any woman you meet, it won't end well." Chike chuckled, taking a sip from his glass of whiskey. He leaned back in his chair, completely at ease. "Ah, Segun, relax now. Life is too short to be worrying about things like that. Why should I tie myself down to one woman when there are so many beautiful women out there just waiting for a taste of Chiki?" Segun shook his head, frustrated by his friend's nonchalance. "It's not about tying yourself down. It's about respect. Respect for yourself. Respect for the women you're with. You can't just keep treating people like they're disposable." Chike waved his hand dismissively. "Respect? These women know what they're getting into. I don't make any promises, and I don't force anyone to do anything they don't want to do. They enjoy the ride, and when it's over, we both move on. Simple." "But it's not that simple, Chike," Segun insisted. "You're playing with people's emotions. One day, you're going to meet someone who won't be so easy to walk away from. You can't keep living like this forever." Cheek laughed again, this time louder. "Ah, Segun, my friend, you worry too much. If I ever meet that woman, maybe I'll settle down. But until then, I'm going to enjoy myself. You should try it sometime instead of always being so serious." Segun sighed, leaning forward in his chair, his voice dropping to a more serious tone. "Chike, I'm saying this because I care about you. I've seen men like you, men who thought they could have it all, only to lose everything. You think you're invincible, but you're not. Karma has a way of catching up with people, and when it does, it's never pretty." Cheek paused for a moment, his smile fading slightly. He respected Segun more than he let on. Of all his friends, Segun was the only one who ever truly challenged him, the only one who wasn't afraid to call him out on his behavior. But even though he valued Segun's opinion, Chike wasn't ready to change. Not yet. "You know I appreciate you, Segun. Cheeky said finally, his voice softening. But I'm not ready for all that responsibility yet. I'm still young. Let me enjoy life while I can. Segun leaned back in his chair, defeated but not surprised. He had hoped that this conversation would be different, that maybe this time Cheeky would take his words to heart. But deep down, he knew his friend wasn't ready to change. Cheek was addicted to the thrill, the excitement of the chase, and nothing Segun said could convince him otherwise. The conversation shifted after that, moving to lighter topics: football, business, the latest gossip from their friends. But Segun couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that had settled in his chest. He knew Cheeky's behavior wasn't sustainable. Something was bound to give, and when it did, Segun feared it would be disastrous. As the evening wore on, Cheeky's phone buzzed with a message. He glanced at the screen and grinned. "Looks like I've got company tonight," he said, standing up and stretching. "It was nice catching up with you, but I've got plans." Segun sighed again but stood up to leave. "Just be careful, Cheeky, that's all I'm saying." Cheeky clapped him on the back, flashing his signature smile. "Always, my friend, always." As Segun left the apartment, he couldn't shake the feeling that his friend was walking down a dangerous path. But what more could he do? He had tried to warn Cheek, to get him to see reason, but Cheek was too caught up in his own world, too blinded by his desires to see the risks he was taking. Cheek, meanwhile, was oblivious to the storm brewing on the horizon. For him, life was simple. He was young, handsome, and successful. Women were drawn to him like moths to a flame, and he enjoyed every moment of it. As far as he was concerned, he was living the dream. But dreams, as they say, can quickly turn into nightmares. The night passed like many others for Chica, filled with laughter, passion, and the fleeting thrill of another conquest. But as the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, even Chica began to notice a slight change in the way he felt about his life. There was an emptiness that lingered after each encounter, a hollowness that no amount of charm or good looks could fill. He found himself thinking about Segun's words more often than he cared to admit. Was his friend right? Was this life he had chosen really as fulfilling as he made it out to be? He brushed the thoughts away every time they surfaced, convincing himself that he was just overthinking. But deep down, the seed of doubt had been planted. Still, Chike continued his ways, refusing to acknowledge the growing dissatisfaction in his heart. He moved from one woman to the next, always seeking that next high, that next thrill. But no matter how many women he bedded, the emptiness remained. One day, as Cheek sat in a cafe, casually scrolling through his phone and sipping his coffee, his phone rang. It was Segun. "Cheek, I need a favor," Segun said without preamble. Cheek raised an eyebrow. "What's up?" "My cousin Amara is coming to Lagos from the village. She's bringing some important documents for me, but I'm going to be out of town for a few days. I need you to meet her at the bus station and help her get settled." Cheek smirked. "Your cousin from the village, eh? What's she like?" Segun's voice was firm. "Don't even think about it, Cheik. Amara is not one of your conquests. Just do me this favor, collect the documents, and make sure she's comfortable until I get back." Cheik laughed. "Relax, Segun. I'll behave. Just text me the details and I'll take care of it." Segun hesitated for a moment before responding. "I'm serious, Cheeky. Don't mess around with this." Cheek's smile widened. "Trust me." As he ended the call, Cheek couldn't help but feel a spark of curiosity. Segun's cousin coming from the village. This could be interesting. Little did Cheek know, meeting Amara would be the turning point in his life, a moment that would change everything. Let's dive into the next chapter where Cheeky meets Amara, and the plot thickens. The following morning, Cheeky was awoken by the blaring sound of his phone ringing on the nightstand. He groggily reached for it, squinting at the screen to see Segun's name flashing. He groaned inwardly, still half asleep, but he answered anyway. "Hello?" he muttered, his voice thick with sleep. "Cheek, Wake up, man. I told you Amara is arriving today. Her bus is getting into Lagos in an hour, and I need you to meet her at the bus station. Segun's voice sounded urgent and slightly irritated. Cheek yawned, sitting up in bed and rubbing his eyes. All right, I remember. I'll be there. You better be. I already sent her your number. She'll call you when she gets to the station. Just make sure she's okay and help her settle in. Segun reminded him again. Cheek nodded, though Segun couldn't see him. I've got it, Segun. I'll take care of it. Segun paused on the other end of the line. Thanks, man. I appreciate it. And don't forget what I said. Amara is family. I'm trusting you with this. Chike chuckled softly. You're acting like I'm going to eat her alive. Relax, Segun. I'll be a perfect gentleman. Segun sighed, not entirely convinced. All right, Chike. I'll hold you to that. Once the call ended, Chike tossed his phone back onto the bed and stretched lazily. The thought of meeting Segun's cousin from the village intrigued him. His mind conjured up all kinds of images of what Amara might be like. Would she be the shy, reserved type? Or perhaps one of those traditional village girls who was all about culture and modesty? Chike grinned to himself as he got ready, curious to see what the day would bring. An hour later, Chike found himself at the bustling bus station. The air was thick with the sounds of honking cars, shouting conductors, and the general noise of Lagos. Chike parked his car and stepped out, scanning the sea of people as he made his way to the platform where the buses were arriving. His phone buzzed and he glanced at the screen. It was an unknown number. Hello? Hi, is this Chike? A soft, feminine voice greeted him. Yes, this is Chike. You must be Amara. Yes, she responded. I just arrived at the bus station. I'm standing by the entrance. I'm wearing a yellow dress. All right, I'm on my way, Chike said before hanging up. As he walked toward the entrance, he wondered what Amara would look like. He imagined a modest village girl, probably wearing a headscarf and simple clothing. But as he approached the entrance, his steps slowed. Standing there, looking around the chaotic station, was Amara. But she was nothing like what Chike had expected. She was a vision of beauty, tall and curvaceous, with smooth caramel-colored skin that glistened in the sunlight. Her bright yellow dress hugged her figure in all the right places, accentuating her curves. Her long, dark hair flowed down her back in soft waves, and she carried herself with an air of confidence that immediately caught Chike's attention. For a moment, Chike was speechless. He couldn't believe this was Segun's cousin, the girl from the village. She looked like she had just walked off the cover of a fashion magazine. As he walked closer, Amara turned and smiled at him, her eyes twinkling with warmth. You must be Chike, she said, her voice as smooth as honey. Chike cleared his throat, trying to regain his composure. Yes, I am. You must be Amara. She nodded, her smile widening. It's nice to finally meet you. Segun's told me a lot about you. Has he now? Chike responded, his usual charm creeping back into his voice. I hope only good things. Amara laughed softly. Mostly good things. Chike grinned. Well, I'm here to make sure you're comfortable while you're in Lagos. Let me help you with your bags. The sun had barely risen the next morning when Chike's phone buzzed. He squinted at the screen, seeing an incoming message from Amara. Good morning, Chike. I was wondering if you could show me around today. I'm free for the day and would love to explore the city. Chike smirked at the message, excitement bubbling inside him. Segun had made it clear to be on his best behavior, but spending more time with Amara didn't seem like a bad idea. After all, he was just being a good host, right? His heart raced as he quickly typed a reply. Good morning, Amara. I'd be happy to. What time should I pick you up? Minutes later, her reply came. How about 11 a.m.? See you then. Chike sat up, energized by the thought of the day ahead. He took extra care with his appearance, choosing a casual yet stylish outfit, something that screamed effortless charm. By the time he arrived at Amara's guest house at 11 a.m. sharp, He was fully prepared for whatever the day might bring. As Amara walked out of the building, Chiki's heart skipped a beat. She was dressed in a simple yet elegant white sundress, her long hair cascading over her shoulders. She wore minimal makeup, but her natural beauty shone through. She looked like a goddess, and Chiki couldn't help but stare as she approached his car. "You look beautiful," Chiki said as she climbed into the passenger seat. Amara smiled, a slight blush creeping onto her cheeks. "Thank you. You don't look too bad yourself." Chik chuckled as he pulled out of the driveway, navigating the busy Lagos streets. "I thought I'd take you to Lekki first. It's one of the nicest parts of Lagos. Beautiful beaches, great restaurants and shopping centers. I think you'll love it." Amara's eyes lit up. "I've heard of Lekki. That sounds perfect." As they arrived at Lekki, Chiki couldn't help but feel a sense of pride as he showed Amara around. The area was buzzing with life. Tourists lounging on the beaches, families enjoying the day, and the vibrant energy of the city's youth filling the air. Chik and Amara strolled down the sandy beach, the cool ocean breeze ruffling their hair, sound of the crashing waves filling the silence between them. As they wandered further down the beach, Chika felt the distance between them close, and his attraction to her grew stronger by the minute. "Let's sit for a bit," Amara suggested, pointing to a spot near the water where the sand was soft. Chike agreed, and they both sat down, the ocean breeze cooling their skin. For a few moments, they sat in comfortable silence, just enjoying the view. But Chike couldn't help but glance at Amara from the corner of his eye. Her beauty was mesmerizing, but there was something else, something beneath the surface that intrigued him. "So, tell me more about you," Chiki said, breaking the silence. Sigun didn't say much. Amara's smile faded slightly, and she looked away toward the water. "There's not much to tell, really. I grew up in the village. Life was simple there, quiet, predictable." Cheek sensed a hesitation in her voice, as if she wasn't telling him the whole story. "And yet, here you are in Lagos. What made you leave the village?" Amara hesitated, her eyes fixed on the horizon. "I guess I just wanted something different. A change." Chike nodded, sensing that she was holding something back. He didn't press further, though. Instead, he leaned back on his hands, staring up at the sky. "I get that. Sometimes, change is good." Amara glanced at him, her eyes softening. "What about you, Chike? Have you always lived in Lagos?" Chike chuckled. "Born and bred. This city is in my blood. But I've thought about leaving sometimes. Maybe living somewhere quieter like the village." Amara raised an eyebrow, surprised. "You? In the village? I can't picture it." Chike laughed. "Yeah, I guess I'm a city boy through and through. But who knows? Maybe one day." They talked for hours, exchanging stories about their lives, their dreams, and their fears. As the day wore on, Chike felt a connection growing between them, one that went beyond physical attraction. He found himself genuinely interested in who Amara was, and the more they talked, the more he realized how much he enjoyed her company. As the sun began to set, casting a warm, golden glow over the beach, Amara turned to Chike with a smile. "Thank you for today. I had a great time." Chike smiled back. "I'm glad you did. I enjoyed it too." They stood up, brushing the sand off their clothes, and began walking back to the car. As they reached the parking lot, Chike opened the door for her, and she slid into the passenger seat with a grateful smile. As they drove back to her guest house, the atmosphere between them felt different. There was a new tension in the air, a tension that hadn't been there before. Chike felt it, and he knew Amara felt it too, but he wasn't sure what to do with it. When they arrived at the guest house, Amara lingered in the car for a moment before turning to Chike. "Thanks again, Chike. I really appreciate everything." Chike smiled, his heart pounding in his chest. It's no problem at all. I'm just glad you enjoyed yourself." For a moment, neither of them moved. The air between them crackled with unspoken words, and Cheeky felt an overwhelming urge to reach out and touch her. But he held himself back, unsure of what she was thinking. "I'll see you tomorrow?" Cheeky asked, his voice softer than usual. Amara hesitated for a brief second before nodding. "Yes, tomorrow." With one last smile, she opened the door and stepped out of the car. As she walked toward the guest house, Cheeky watched her go, his mind racing. He knew he was getting in deep, but something about Amara made it impossible to pull away. As he drove home that night, he couldn't stop thinking about her, the way she smiled, the sound of her laughter, the way she had looked at him during those quiet moments on the beach. There was something between them, something undeniable, and Cheeky wasn't sure if he was ready to handle it. But one thing was certain: Amara had captivated him in a way no other woman ever had. And now that he had met her, there was no going back. Now, the stage is set for their growing attraction, and things are about to take a more complicated turn. In the next chapter, the lies start unraveling as both Cheeky and Amara begin hiding their true selves from one another. Stay tuned. The days passed in a blur for Cheeky. He found himself spending more and more time with Amara, drawn to her beauty, charm, and the mystery that surrounded her. She was unlike any woman he had ever met, and though his heart whispered warnings, he ignored them. He was too captivated by her to see the warning signs. "So, how are you finding Lagos so far?" Cheeky asked, glancing at her. "It's overwhelming but exciting," Amara replied. "Everything moves so fast here. It's so different from the village." Cheeky nodded, watching her closely. "I imagine the village must be a lot quieter. But Lagos has its charm too." Amara smiled, her eyes scanning the ocean waves. "I think I like it here. There's something about the energy that's intoxicating." Cheeky grinned, his eyes lingering on her. "You seem to fit right in." Amara laughed softly, the sound melodious and warm. "Maybe, but I miss the peace and quiet of home sometimes." They walked along the shore for a while longer. The Amara, for her part, played the role of the perfect village girl. She was sweet, soft-spoken, and respectful whenever Segun's name came up in conversation. She spoke of her simple life in the village, her love for family, and her excitement at experiencing the wonders of Lagos. But beneath her charming facade, Amara had secrets of her own, secrets she wasn't ready to share. One evening, after another day of exploring the city together, Cheeky and Amara found themselves sitting on the balcony of her guest house, sipping drinks and enjoying the cool evening breeze. "Thank you for today, Cheek," Amara said softly, her eyes sparkling in the moonlight. "You've been so kind to me. I don't know how to repay you." Cheeky grinned, leaning back in his chair. "No need to repay me, Amara. I'm just doing my job, being a good friend to Segun's cousin." Amara's lips curled into a playful smile. "Is that all I am? Segun's cousin?" Cheeky chuckled, feeling the familiar pull of attraction tightening between them. "You're more than that, Amara." There was a moment of silence as they stared at each other, the air thick with tension. Cheeky could feel his heart racing, and he knew Amara could too. The connection between them had grown stronger over the past few days, and now it felt like they were teetering on the edge of something more. Amara took a slow sip of her drink before setting the glass down. She leaned forward slightly, her voice dropping to a low, sultry tone. "You know, Cheek, I've never been with anyone before." Cheek raised an eyebrow, surprised. "You've never had a boyfriend?" Amara shook her head, her expression innocent. "I've never been in a relationship. I've never even, you know." She trailed off, letting the implication hang in the air. Cheek's eyes widened. "Wait, are you saying you're a virgin?" Amara nodded, her cheeks flushing with what seemed like embarrassment. "I'm not as experienced as most girls, Chike. I grew up in a strict, traditional home. My parents always told me to wait for the right person for marriage." Chike blinked, processing this revelation. He had been with more women than he could count, and the idea of someone like Amara, so beautiful, so confident, being a virgin was almost unbelievable. But there she was, sitting across from him, looking shy and vulnerable. Chike felt a pang of guilt. Segun had warned him to be careful, to not get too close. But now, sitting here with Amara, all those warnings seemed to fade into the background. He was too captivated by her to care. "You're a special woman, Amara," Cheek said softly, reaching out to take her hand. "And any man would be lucky to be your first." Amara smiled, her eyes flickering with something Cheeky couldn't quite place. "Thank you, Chike. That means a lot." As the night wore on, their conversation grew more intimate, their connection deepening. Chike found himself falling for her, drawn to the idea of being the one to introduce her to the world of love and passion. But what he didn't know was that Amara's innocence was just another layer in the web of lies she was weaving. Later that week, Cheeky found himself growing more and more obsessed with Amara. They spent almost every day together, and he couldn't deny the magnetic pull he felt toward her. He had dated plenty of women, but none had captivated him the way Amara did. He wanted her, needed her, but something about her remained just out of reach. One evening, after dinner, Amara invited Chike to her guest house for a movie. As they sat on the couch, their shoulders brushing, Chike felt the tension between them growing. His heart pounded in his chest as he glanced at her, wondering if tonight would be the night. As the movie played on, Amara slowly leaned into him, resting her head on his shoulder. Cheek's pulse quickened, his mind racing with thoughts of what might happen next. He turned his head slightly, his eyes locking with hers. "I think I'm falling for you, Amara," he whispered, his voice thick with desire. Amara's eyes sparkled with a mixture of emotions, desire, guilt, and something else Cheeky couldn't quite identify. She bit her lip, hesitating for a moment before speaking. "I think I'm falling for you too, Chike," she replied softly, "but there's something you should know." Chike's brow furrowed. "What is it?" Amara looked down at her hands, fidgeting with the hem of her dress. "I haven't been completely honest with you. I'm not as innocent as I've led you to believe." Cheek's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" Amara sighed, her voice barely a whisper. I haven't been completely honest about my past. I'm not a virgin, Chike. I've been with other men before. I'm sorry." Chike blinked, trying to process what she had just said. For a moment, he didn't know how to react. His mind raced, thinking back to all the conversations they had shared, all the moments when Amara had played the part of the innocent, inexperienced village girl. "So, why did you lie?" Cheek asked, his voice laced with confusion. Amara looked away, her face contorted with guilt. "I don't know. I guess I didn't want you to think less of me. I've made mistakes in the past, and I didn't want that to affect how you saw me." Chike stared at her for a moment, the weight of her confession sinking in. A part of him felt betrayed, but another part of him understood. He had lied plenty of times in his own life, and he knew what it was like to hide parts of yourself out of fear of being judged. "I get it," Cheek said finally, his voice softening. "We all have things we're not proud of. I've made my own share of mistakes." Amara looked up at him, her eyes filled with uncertainty. "So, you're not angry?" Cheeky shook his head. "No, I'm not angry. But I wish you had told me the truth sooner." Amara smiled, a small, relieved laugh escaping her lips. "I'm sorry, Chike. I'll be more honest with you from now on." Cheek nodded, feeling the tension between them begin to dissipate. He leaned in, gently brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "I want to get to know the real you, Amara. No more lies." Amara's eyes softened and she nodded in agreement. No more lies. But even as they shared that intimate moment, both Chike and Amara knew that the truth was far more complicated than either of them was willing to admit. Amara's confession was only the tip of the iceberg, and beneath the surface lay secrets that neither of them was prepared to face. As the night went on, Chike and Amara grew closer, but the lies between them continued to fester, unseen and unspoken. They were both playing a dangerous game, one that could only end in heartbreak. Chapter 5. A Wedding of Lies. The tension between Chike and Amara seemed to evaporate after that night, and their relationship grew stronger, or so it appeared. Despite Amara's confession, Chike remained captivated by her. The allure of her beauty and the charm she exuded blinded him to the deeper, more troubling aspects of her character. He convinced himself that her past didn't matter, that she was still the same sweet, innocent woman who had captured his heart. Amara, on the other hand, felt a mixture of guilt and triumph. She had managed to weave a web of lies, and yet still had Chike wrapped around her finger. But the guilt gnawed at her. She knew that her deception could only last so long. Still, the thrill of living a double life exhilarated her, and she wasn't ready to give that up. One afternoon, just as Chike was beginning to feel confident in their relationship, his phone buzzed with a message from Segun. "Bro, I'll be back in town in 2 weeks. Hope my cousin isn't giving you too much trouble." Chike grinned at the message, his fingers flying across the screen as he typed a response. "She's no trouble at all, man. In fact, things are going great between us." The message was simple, but it made Chike pause. Things were going great, weren't they? He had fallen hard for Amara, and despite her lie about her past, he believed that they had something real. But as he reread the message, doubt began to creep in. Would Segun approve of this relationship? What would happen when he found out how close they had gotten? 2 weeks later, Segun returned to Lagos, and Chike could no longer keep his feelings for Amara a secret. Over a casual lunch, he decided to break the news. "Segun, I need to tell you something," Chike began, his voice uncertain. Segun raised an eyebrow, setting down his drink. "What's up, man? You look serious." Chike hesitated for a moment before blurting out, "I'm in love with Amara." The confession hung in the air between them, and Segun's expression shifted from surprise to something more unreadable. "Wait, what? You and Amara?" Segun asked, his brow furrowed. "How did that happen?" Chike sighed, running a hand through his hair. "We've been spending a lot of time together, and I don't know. It just happened. I wasn't expecting it, but I really care about her, Segun." For a moment, Segun didn't say anything. He simply stared at Chike, as if weighing his next words carefully. "I mean, Amara's family, bro," Segun said slowly. "You know I trust you, but are you sure this is serious? You're not just fooling around with her, are you?" Chike shook his head, his heart pounding. "No, I'm serious, Segun. I love her." Segun's expression softened slightly, though there was still a hint of concern in his eyes. "All right, man. If you're serious about this, I'll support you. Just don't hurt her, okay? She's been through a lot." Chike nodded, relief flooding through him. "I won't, I promise." With Segun's blessing, Chike felt a surge of confidence. He was ready to take things to the next level with Amara, and it didn't take long for him to make a decision that would change both their lives forever. A few days later, Chike took Amara out to a romantic dinner at one of the most expensive restaurants in Lagos. The soft glow of candlelight illuminated their faces as they sat across from each other, the sound of gentle music playing in the background. Amara looked stunning, dressed in a sleek, form-fitting gown that highlighted her flawless figure. Throughout the evening, Chike couldn't keep his eyes off her. Every smile, every laugh, every glance made his heart race. He knew without a doubt that he wanted to spend the rest of his life with her, even if they were both hiding parts of themselves. As the waiter brought out dessert, Chike cleared his throat, his heart pounding in his chest. Amara looked at him curiously, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. "Amara," Cheeky began, reaching across the table to take her hand. "These past few weeks with you have been amazing. I've never felt this way about anyone before. You've changed me." Amara's eyes softened, a smile playing on her lips. "Cheek, But before she could finish her sentence, Cheek reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box, opening it to reveal a sparkling diamond ring. "Amara," Cheeky said, his voice trembling slightly, "will you marry me?" For a moment, Amara stared at the ring, her breath catching in her throat. The proposal had come out of nowhere. She hadn't expected things to move this quickly, but as she looked at the ring and then at Cheek's hopeful face, a surge of emotion washed over her. She had lied to him, deceived him, but here he was, asking her to be his wife. "Yes," Amara whispered, her voice barely audible. "Yes, I'll marry you." The restaurant erupted in applause as Cheeky slipped the ring onto her finger, his heart swelling with joy. Amara's smile was radiant, but deep down, a knot of guilt tightened in her stomach. She wasn't the woman Cheek thought she was, and as much as she wanted to bask in the happiness of the moment, she knew that the truth would eventually come out. The wedding was a whirlwind of preparations. Chika spared no expense, determined to give Amara the fairy tale wedding she deserved. Friends and family gathered from all corners of Nigeria to witness the union of the couple. Amara's parents, proud and beaming, stood by her side as she prepared to walk down the aisle. But as the wedding day approached, Amara found herself grappling with the weight of her deception. She had lied to Chike about her past, about who she really was. She wasn't the innocent village girl she had pretended to be. She was a woman with a complicated history, one that included wild nights, countless lovers, and a reckless lifestyle she had tried to leave behind. On the day of the wedding, Amara stood in front of the mirror in her bridal suite, her reflection staring back at her. The dress was exquisite, an ivory lace gown that hugged her curves perfectly. Her hair was styled in an elegant updo, and her makeup was flawless. She looked like a princess, but as she gazed at her reflection, she felt hollow inside. The weight of her lies pressed down on her, suffocating her. She had promised herself that she would be more honest with Chike, but instead she had woven an even more tangled web of deceit. There was a knock on the door, and her maid of honor poked her head in. "Amara, it's time." Amara took a deep breath, forcing a smile as she nodded. "I'm ready." As she made her way down the aisle, her heart pounded in her chest. The church was filled with their loved ones, all of them smiling and cheering as she approached the altar. Chiki stood at the end of the aisle, looking more handsome than ever in his tailored suit, his eyes filled with love and adoration. But as Amara walked toward him, each step felt heavier than the last. She could feel the weight of her lies crushing her, and for a moment she wondered if she should turn around and run. But it was too late. She was too far gone. When she finally reached the altar, Chike took her hand, his smile radiant. "You look beautiful," he whispered. Amara smiled back, but it didn't reach her eyes. As the priest began the ceremony, her mind raced with thoughts of the life she had left behind, the life she had lied about. When the priest asked if anyone had any objections to the marriage, Amara held her breath, half expecting someone to stand up and reveal her secrets. But the room remained silent, and the ceremony continued. By the time they exchanged vows and rings, Amara felt like she was suffocating. But when Chike kissed her, sealing their union, the weight of her guilt momentarily lifted. For a brief, fleeting moment, everything felt perfect. As they celebrated their wedding night, the reality of their lies began to take hold. Chiki, having lied about his own experiences, believed he was about to experience something special with Amara. But unbeknownst to him, Amara had planned ahead, Determined to maintain her facade of innocence, she had done her research, finding ways to make their first night together appear as if she was still a virgin. She had purchased a V-tightener and even brought flesh meat with her, intending to stage a scene that would convince Chike that he was her first. As the night unfolded, Amara put her plan into action, creating the perfect illusion. Chike, blissfully unaware, believed her deception. He marveled at her purity, feeling a sense of pride and satisfaction that he was the first man to experience her in this way. But as they lay together in the dark, Amara felt a hollow emptiness in her chest. The lies had worked, but at what cost? She had deceived Chike once again, and the guilt weighed heavily on her heart. Chapter 5. A Wedding of Lies. Continued. Chike, however, was completely oblivious. He held her close, whispering sweet words of love and reassurance. "Tonight has been perfect, Amara. I'm so happy we're together." Amara forced a smile, her heart heavy with the weight of her deception. "I'm happy too, Chike," she said softly, trying to sound genuine. But as the hours wore on, the facade she had so carefully constructed began to crack. She knew that maintaining the illusion would require constant effort. Every moment spent together would be a reminder of the lies she had told. Yet, as Chike fell asleep beside her, Amara was left alone with her thoughts. The guilt of her deceit was overwhelming, and she wondered how long she could keep up the charade. Days turned into weeks, and the newlyweds settled into their routine. Life in their luxurious apartment was filled with moments of joy and domestic bliss, but the undercurrent of deceit continued to simmer beneath the surface. Chike was completely devoted to Amara, believing that their marriage was everything he had ever dreamed of. Amara, however, found it increasingly difficult to reconcile her public persona with the private reality of her lies. Despite her efforts to maintain her innocent facade, Amara couldn't help but slip into old habits. Her past life, filled with indulgences and wild nights, had left a mark on her. She found herself craving the excitement she had once enjoyed, but now she was bound by her deception, unable to seek solace in her old ways without risking exposure. One evening, as Chike worked late at the office, Amara's loneliness drove her to the brink. She found herself browsing through her old contacts on her phone, tempted by the familiarity of her previous life. The temptation was strong, and despite her guilt, she sent a message to an old friend, inviting him over for a visit. The doorbell rang later that evening, and Amara's heart raced as she answered it. Her old friend, a charming and mischievous man named Ife, stood in the doorway, his eyes twinkling with mischief. "Ife," Amara greeted him, forcing a cheerful tone. "It's been a while. Come in." Ife grinned, stepping into the apartment. "Amara, it's good to see you. I heard you got married. How's the new life treating you?" Amara offered him a drink, and as they chatted, the familiarity of their conversation eased some of her tension. They reminisced about their past adventures, and for a moment, Amara felt like her old self again. But as the night wore on, the temptation to cross the line became irresistible. Ife's presence stirred memories of the wild nights they used to share. Amara found herself drawn to him, her resolve wavering. They flirted playfully, the chemistry between them undeniable. But as the night progressed, Amara's guilt grew heavier. She was betraying Chike, the man who loved her unconditionally. Just as the situation began to escalate, Chike unexpectedly arrived home early. The sight of Ife in their apartment was enough to make his heart sink. He could sense the tension between them and immediately felt a pang of betrayal. "Amara, what's going on here?" Chike's voice was cold, and his eyes were filled with hurt. Amara froze, her face flushing with embarrassment and guilt. She turned to Ife, who quickly understood the gravity of the situation and made a hasty exit. "Chike, it's not what it looks like," Amara said desperately. "I didn't mean for this to happen." Chike's expression was one of disbelief. "So, You've been lying to me again? First about your past, and now this. Amara offered him a drink, and as they chatted, the familiarity of their conversation eased some of her tension. They reminisced about their past adventures, and for a moment, Amara felt like her old self again. But as the night wore on, the temptation to cross the line became irresistible. If's presence stirred memories of the wild nights they used to share. Amara found herself drawn to him, her resolve wavering. They flirted playfully, the chemistry between them undeniable. But as the night progressed, Amara's guilt grew heavier. She was betraying Chiki, the man who loved her unconditionally. Just as the situation began to escalate, Chiki unexpectedly arrived home early. The sight of Ife in their apartment was enough to make his heart sink. He could sense the tension between them and immediately felt a pang of betrayal. "Amara, what's going on here?" Cheek's voice was cold and his eyes were filled with hurt. Amara froze, her face flushing with embarrassment and guilt. She turned to Aoife, who quickly understood the gravity of the situation and made a hasty exit. "Cheek, it's not what it looks like," Amara said desperately. "I didn't mean for this to happen." Cheek's expression was one of disbelief. "So you've been lying to me again? First about your past, and now this?" Amara's eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry, Cheek. I didn't mean to hurt you. I've been struggling with my past, and I didn't know how to handle it." Chiki shook his head, his heart breaking. "I trusted you, Amara. I thought we had something real. But now, I don't know what to believe." The confrontation left Amara shattered. She had always known that her lies would eventually catch up with her, but she hadn't anticipated the pain it would cause Chika. The weight of her deceit was almost too much to bear. The part 1 of the story has ended. Make sure you subscribe and like the video to encourage us to upload interesting part 2. Until then, let's call it a day.